Ancient Roman emperors consulted philosophers before making decisions that shaped civilizations. Yet 73% of modern leaders admit they've never studied philosophy for practical decision-making. Today, we're exploring 15 transformative Stoic principles that don't just build character, they systematically enhance your cognitive abilities, sharpen decision-making, and unlock mental clarity that most people never access. The final technique we'll cover has been called the ultimate intelligence multiplier by cognitive scientists. Before we dive in, think of your biggest mental challenge right now, whether it's overthinking, poor focus, or decision paralysis. Keep that in mind as we progress, because by the end, you'll have a clear roadmap to overcome it. Lesson 1. The Dichotomy of Control, Cognitive Load Reduction. What if I told you that most mental exhaustion comes from trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable? The Stoic principle of dichotomy of control teaches us to categorize every situation into two buckets: what we can influence and what we cannot. When you stop expending mental energy on uncontrollables, other people's opinions, past events, future uncertainties, you free up massive cognitive resources for what actually matters. Epictetus, who developed this principle while enslaved, understood that even in the most constrained circumstances, you retain complete control over your thoughts, judgments, and responses. He taught that suffering comes not from external events, but from our resistance to what we cannot change. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. Decision fatigue occurs when we waste mental bandwidth on pseudo-choices and uncontrollable variables. Consider how much mental energy you spend worrying about your boss's mood, tomorrow's weather, or past mistakes. These concerns create what psychologists call cognitive overhead, background mental processes that drain your intellectual capacity. Dr. Roy Baumeister's research on decision fatigue shows that people make progressively worse choices throughout the day as their mental resources deplete. The key insight is that worrying about uncontrollables accelerates this depletion without providing any benefit. Your brain operates like a smartphone battery. Conserve power on meaningless apps, and you'll have energy for the important ones. When you consistently redirect attention from uncontrollables to controllables, you develop what cognitive scientists call attentional bias toward actionable elements. This shift has measurable effects. Studies show people who practice dichotomy of control report 34% less anxiety and 28% better problem-solving performance within 6 weeks. The practical application involves 3 daily practices. First, morning categorization. List 3 current concerns and honestly assess which elements you can influence. Second, throughout the day, when you notice worry or frustration, pause and ask, is this controllable or uncontrollable? Third, evening review. Identify one situation where you wasted energy on uncontrollables and plan how to redirect that energy tomorrow. The advanced version involves recognizing partial control situations. Most real-world scenarios aren't purely controllable or uncontrollable, but involve degrees of influence. You can't control whether you get a job promotion, but you can control the quality of your work, your skill development, and your application strategy. This nuanced thinking prevents the helplessness that comes from oversimplifying complex situations. Start each day by listing 3 things you're worried about, then honestly categorize them as controllable or uncontrollable. Your intelligence becomes laser-focused instead of scattered. Lesson 2. Negative visualization, mental simulation mastery. Ancient Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining potential setbacks not to become pessimistic, but to build mental preparedness and cognitive resilience. This isn't catastrophic thinking. It's strategic scenario planning that enhances cognitive flexibility and emotional stability. When you mentally rehearse challenges, your brain creates neural pathways for problem solving before problems arise, giving you a decisive advantage when difficulties actually materialize. Seneca regularly imagined losing his wealth, status, and health, not because he was morbid, but because he understood that psychological preparation reduces shock and improves response quality. Modern military strategists use similar techniques called red team exercises, where they deliberately imagine how their plans could fail. Elite athletes use visualization to improve performance by mentally rehearsing both success and potential obstacles. The neuroscience behind negative visualization reveals why it works so effectively. When you imagine challenging scenarios, your brain activates the same neural networks involved in actually experiencing those situations. This mental rehearsal builds what psychologists call stress inoculation. Your nervous system becomes familiar with potential challenges, reducing the fight-or-flight response when they occur. Research by Dr. Dennis Charney shows that people who regularly practice mental simulation demonstrate 41% better emotional regulation during actual crises. The key difference between productive negative visualization and anxious rumination lies in intentionality and structure. Anxious rumination involves passive worry without problem solving, while Stoic negative visualization actively develops contingency plans. You're not spiraling into anxiety, you're building mental models and response strategies. This practice enhances what cognitive scientists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt thinking patterns when circumstances change. Successful entrepreneurs intuitively use this principle to anticipate market shifts, identify potential business failures, and develop backup plans. Warren Buffett's famous quote, "Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked," reflects this mindset. He regularly imagines economic downturns to ensure his investment strategies remain robust under various conditions. Research shows that people who practice negative visualization make 23% better decisions under pressure because they've already mentally navigated similar situations. The practice involves 3 structured steps. First, choose one area of your life where you feel particularly attached or vulnerable, your career, relationship, health, or financial situation. Second, spend 10 minutes imagining specific ways this area could change or disappear, not dwelling on emotions, but focusing on practical implications. Third, develop 3 concrete responses you would implement if each scenario occurred. Advanced practitioners extend this to daily decisions by asking, what could go wrong with this choice before important commitments? This isn't pessimism, but comprehensive planning that accounts for uncertainty. The result is remarkable mental preparedness that transforms you from someone who reacts to circumstances into someone who anticipates and adapts. Spend 10 minutes weekly imagining 1 potential challenge and 3 possible responses. Your mind becomes anti-fragile instead of fragile. Lesson 3, present moment awareness, attention optimization. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This isn't philosophical poetry, but practical neuroscience about attention management. Modern attention research reveals why present moment awareness directly correlates with intelligence. The average person's mind wanders 47% of the time, creating what scientists call cognitive scatter that dramatically reduces intellectual performance. When your attention jumps between past regrets and future anxieties, you lose access to your full cognitive capacity. Dr. Matthew Killingsworth's Harvard study tracking 15,000 people found that mental wandering consistently predicts unhappiness. But more importantly for our purposes, it predicts poor performance on complex tasks. Your working memory, the mental workspace where you manipulate information, becomes fragmented when attention scatters across time zones. Present moment awareness isn't meditation mysticism. It's attention training that directly improves working memory, pattern recognition, and creative problem solving. When you anchor attention in the present, your mind becomes like a laser instead of a flashlight. Neuroscientist Dr. Amishi Jha's research with military personnel shows that mindfulness training improves working memory capacity by 30% and enhances cognitive flexibility under stress. The mechanism involves the prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive center, which manages attention allocation. When you practice present moment awareness, you strengthen the neural networks responsible for sustained attention and cognitive control. This enhanced attention control translates directly into better learning, decision-making, and problem-solving across all domains. Companies like Google, Apple, and Goldman Sachs have implemented mindfulness training because focused employees outperform distracted ones by 40% on complex tasks. The return on investment is clear. Better attention leads to better thinking, which leads to better outcomes. Dr. Daniel Goleman's research shows that leaders with stronger attention skills make superior strategic decisions because they can hold complex information in awareness without getting overwhelmed. The practice begins with recognizing attention as a trainable skill rather than a fixed trait. Most people believe they're either focused or unfocused by nature, but neuroscience proves attention can be systematically developed. The key is understanding that mind-wandering isn't failure. It's information about where your attention went, providing opportunities to redirect it. Start with micro-practices throughout the day. When walking, periodically notice your feet touching the ground. During conversations, catch yourself planning responses while others speak and redirect attention to their actual words. While eating, occasionally focus on taste, texture, and temperature rather than consuming mindlessly. The advanced technique involves using present moment awareness as a cognitive enhancement tool during challenging mental tasks. When working on complex problems, periodically check, where is my attention right now? If it's scattered across multiple concerns, gently redirect it to the single most important element of the current task. Practice the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Notice 5 things you see, 4 you hear, 3 you feel, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. Your attention becomes your competitive advantage. Lesson 4, emotional objectivity. Clear thinking under pressure. Emotions aren't the enemy of intelligence. Unexamined emotions are. Stoics developed emotional objectivity by treating feelings as data points rather than commands that must be obeyed. When anger arises, instead of being swept away by its intensity, you observe with curiosity. I'm experiencing anger. What information is this giving me about the situation or my values? This creates what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between frustration, disappointment, rage, and irritation with precision. The neuroscience reveals why emotional objectivity enhances intelligence. When you're hijacked by strong emotions, the amygdala, your brain's alarm system, floods your system with stress hormones that impair the prefrontal cortex's executive functions. Dr. Daniel Goleman's research shows that people in emotional states show 25% worse performance on cognitive tasks requiring working memory, attention, and logical reasoning. Emotional objectivity isn't emotional suppression. It's emotional regulation that maintains cognitive access. Research by Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett at Northeastern University shows that people with higher emotional granularity make superior decisions because they understand the precise nature of their internal state. Instead of experiencing bad feelings, they identify specific emotions like disappointment, frustration, or anxiety. This precision matters because different emotions provide different information and require different responses. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this practice in his personal journal, now known as Meditations. He would write observations like, "I am experiencing irritation because my expectations weren't met," rather than, "People are stupid." This reframing transformed emotional reactions into useful information about his assumptions, expectations, and values. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy uses similar techniques, helping people recognize that emotions are interpretations of events rather than direct reflections of reality. The practical application involves developing what Dr. Mark Brackett calls emotional intelligence skills, the ability to recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate emotions effectively. When you feel emotional intensity, pause and ask 3 questions. What exactly am I feeling? What triggered this emotion? What information is this emotion providing about my needs or values? Advanced practitioners use emotions as cognitive enhancers rather than obstacles. Anxiety often signals that you need more information or preparation. Anger frequently indicates that important values are being violated. Sadness sometimes reveals that you're grieving losses or transitions. Instead of being controlled by these feelings, you extract their intelligence and then choose your response deliberately. The technique becomes particularly powerful in high-stakes situations. Navy SEALs use similar emotional regulation training because clear thinking under extreme pressure is literally life or death. Dr. Eric Potterat's research with elite military units shows that emotional objectivity training improves decision-making quality by 43% in high-stress scenarios. Your emotions become instruments instead of obstacles when you develop this skill. The practice requires consistent attention to your internal state without judgment. Observing emotions like a scientist studying interesting phenomena rather than a victim being overwhelmed by forces beyond control. The next time you feel strong emotion, pause and name it specifically, not just bad or good, but the exact flavor of that feeling. Your emotional intelligence becomes your cognitive advantage. Lesson 5, Systematic Self-Questioning, Critical Thinking Enhancement. Socrates taught that wisdom begins with knowing what you don't know, and Stoics developed this insight into systematic self-inquiry that dramatically improves decision-making quality. Before making important decisions, they engaged in structured internal dialogue, asking penetrating questions. What assumptions am I making that might be wrong? What evidence contradicts my current position? What would someone I respect, but who disagrees with me, advise in this situation? This isn't self-doubt or analysis paralysis. It's intellectual rigor that prevents costly mistakes by exposing blind spots before they become problems. The human brain is designed to seek confirming evidence and avoid information that challenges existing beliefs, a cognitive bias psychologists call confirmation bias. Systematic self-questioning directly counters this tendency by forcing you to actively seek disconfirming evidence and alternative perspectives. Dr. Philip Tetlock's research on forecasting accuracy, detailed in his book Super Forecasting, reveals that the most accurate predictors consistently engage in this type of systematic self-interrogation. They ask themselves, what could make me wrong? What don't I know that I should know? How confident should I really be in this judgment? These questions activate what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about thinking, which is strongly correlated with superior decision-making across domains. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this practice in his private writings, constantly questioning his assumptions and examining his reasoning process. He would write entries like, "Am I seeing this situation clearly, or am I influenced by my desires and fears?" This internal interrogation prevented the kind of self-deception that destroys leaders and derails important decisions. Modern cognitive science explains why systematic self-questioning enhances intelligence. When you ask yourself challenging questions, you activate different neural networks than when you simply confirm existing beliefs. Dr. Keith Stanovich's research on rational thinking shows that people who regularly engage in self-questioning demonstrate significantly better performance on tests of cognitive bias resistance and logical reasoning. The practice involves developing personal question frameworks for different types of decisions. For career choices, you might ask, what am I assuming about this industry's future? How am I weighing short-term versus long-term factors? What would someone who knows me well but thinks differently advise? For relationship decisions, what patterns am I not seeing? How might my past experiences be influencing this judgment? What would this look like in 5 years? Advanced practitioners develop domain-specific questioning protocols. Investors might ask, what could cause this investment thesis to fail? What am I not seeing about market conditions? How does my emotional state influence this decision? Scientists ask, what alternative explanations exist for these results? What biases might influence my interpretation? How could I design a test to prove myself wrong? The key is making self-questioning systematic rather than occasional. Studies show that people who engage in structured self-inquiry before major decisions report 35% higher satisfaction with outcomes 6 months later because they've considered more variables and avoided obvious pitfalls. Your questions become quality control for your thinking process. Create a decision checklist with 3 questions you ask before every significant choice. What could go wrong? What am I not seeing? Who else should I consult? Your intelligence becomes systematic instead of random. Lesson 6. Acceptance of uncertainty. Probabilistic reasoning. Most people crave certainty in an uncertain world, leading to analysis paralysis or premature closure on complex decisions. Stoics embraced uncertainty as reality's fundamental nature, developing comfort with probability instead of demanding guarantees that don't exist. This mindset shift enables superior decision-making under ambiguity, exactly the conditions where intelligence matters most and where most people become cognitively paralyzed. Epictetus taught that demanding certainty in an uncertain world creates suffering and poor judgment. Modern behavioral economics confirms this ancient insight. People who insist on certainty often make worse decisions because they either delay action, indefinitely waiting for more information, or they convince themselves they have certainty when they don't, leading to overconfidence and inadequate preparation for alternative outcomes. The neuroscience of uncertainty reveals why most people struggle with ambiguous situations. The anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors for conflicts and inconsistencies, becomes hyperactive when facing uncertain outcomes. This creates psychological discomfort that pushes people toward premature closure, accepting the first plausible explanation rather than maintaining openness to multiple possibilities. Dr. Ari Kruglanski's research on need for closure shows that people with low uncertainty tolerance make faster but less accurate judgments. Stoics developed specific techniques for thriving under uncertainty. They practiced distinguishing between what they could know with confidence and what remained genuinely uncertain, avoiding the mental trap of false precision. Instead of asking, "What will happen?" they asked, "What are the most likely outcomes and how should I prepare for each?" This probabilistic thinking dramatically improves decision quality in complex situations. Modern research in behavioral economics shows that people who accept uncertainty make better long-term investments, career choices, and relationship decisions because they focus on probability management rather than prediction. Warren Buffett exemplifies this approach, regularly acknowledging uncertainty while making excellent investment decisions based on probability assessments rather than predictions about specific future events. The practice involves recalibrating your relationship with uncertainty from enemy to ally. Uncertainty contains valuable information. It tells you where to focus additional research, where to build flexibility into your plans, and where to prepare multiple response strategies. Dr. Annie Duke's research on decision-making shows that poker players, who must constantly make decisions under uncertainty, develop superior judgment skills that transfer to other domains. Advanced practitioners use uncertainty as a strategic advantage. While others become paralyzed by ambiguous situations, you become more thoughtful and prepared. You develop scenario planning skills, build adaptive capacity, and maintain optionality, keeping multiple paths open instead of committing prematurely to single courses of action. The technique involves distinguishing between productive uncertainty acknowledgement and unproductive worry. Productive uncertainty leads to better preparation and more flexible strategies. Unproductive worry cycles endlessly without generating useful action plans. When facing unclear situations, ask, what are the most likely outcomes instead of what will definitely happen? Your intelligence becomes probabilistic instead of binary, giving you decisive advantages in our uncertain world. Lesson 7. Virtue-based decision-making, ethical intelligence. Stoics believed that virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, provides the clearest decision-making framework because virtuous actions align with long-term flourishing and create internal coherence. This isn't moral preaching, but practical intelligence. When you filter decisions through consistent ethical principles, you eliminate options that might provide short-term gains but create long-term problems, while identifying choices that compound positively over time. The 4 cardinal virtues function as decision-making algorithms. Wisdom asks, what does the evidence suggest, and what are the long-term consequences? Justice asks, how does this affect others, and what do I owe to my community? Courage asks, what would I do if I weren't afraid? Temperance asks, what is the right amount, and what are my true needs versus desires? These questions systematically improve decision quality by forcing consideration of multiple important factors. Research by Harvard Business School professor Max Bazerman shows that leaders who consistently apply ethical frameworks make decisions 28% faster because they have clear criteria for evaluation rather than getting lost in endless option analysis. The virtue framework eliminates many choices immediately. If an option violates justice or wisdom, you don't need to spend mental energy analyzing its other aspects. This creates cognitive efficiency while maintaining moral coherence. The practical power of virtue-based decision-making becomes evident in complex situations where multiple factors compete for attention. Consider career choices. Pure self-interest might suggest taking the highest-paying job, but virtue-based thinking considers whether the work contributes to human flourishing, justice, develops your capabilities, wisdom, requires you to act against your values, courage, and provides appropriate work-life balance, temperance. Dr. Barry Schwartz's research on practical wisdom shows that people who consistently apply virtue-based decision-making report higher life satisfaction and fewer regrets because their choices align with their deepest values rather than fluctuating emotions or social pressures. The decisions feel authentic because they reflect who you want to be, not just what you want to have. The approach also enhances what psychologists call moral imagination, the ability to see ethical dimensions in situations that others view as purely technical or strategic. This expanded perspective often reveals creative solutions that serve multiple stakeholders simultaneously, creating what economists call positive sum outcomes where everyone benefits. Advanced practitioners develop personal interpretations of the 4 virtues that reflect their specific roles and circumstances. An entrepreneur might interpret justice as creating genuine value for customers, courage as taking intelligent risks, temperance as sustainable growth strategies, and wisdom as long-term thinking. A parent might interpret these virtues differently, but the framework provides consistent guidance across all life domains. The technique becomes particularly powerful in high-pressure situations, where emotions and social pressures push toward expedient choices. The virtue framework provides an anchor that maintains integrity when external forces encourage compromise. Research shows that people who use consistent ethical frameworks show 34% less decision regret over 5-year periods. Before major choices, ask, which option demonstrates wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline? Your values become your decision-making advantage, creating clarity in complexity and coherence across all life domains. Lesson 8. The view from above. Perspective-taking skills. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced imagining himself from a cosmic perspective, seeing his concerns from the viewpoint of the universe, from 10,000 feet above, or from his future deathbed. This wasn't nihilism or spiritual bypassing, but perspective calibration that prevents getting lost in trivial concerns while maintaining appropriate urgency for what truly matters. The view from above technique systematically enhances what psychologists call psychological distance, which directly improves decision-making quality. The neuroscience of perspective-taking reveals why this practice enhances intelligence. When you imagine situations from different viewpoints or timeframes, you activate the brain's default mode network and executive control regions simultaneously. Dr. Ethan Cross's research at the University of Michigan shows that people who regularly practice perspective-taking demonstrate 45% better problem-solving performance because they can see solutions invisible from ground level. The technique works by reducing what psychologists call construal level, the tendency to get trapped in immediate, concrete details while missing broader patterns and long-term implications. When you zoom out temporally, how will this matter in 10 years? Or spatially, how does this look from space? You access different cognitive resources that specialize in pattern recognition and strategic thinking rather than tactical problem-solving. Ancient Stoics understood that most daily stresses come from perspective distortion, treating minor inconveniences as major crises, while underestimating genuinely important long-term trends. The view from above corrects this distortion by providing multiple reference frames for evaluating situations. What feels overwhelming from close-up often appears manageable from sufficient distance. The practice has 3 variations, each serving different cognitive functions. Temporal distancing asks, how will I view this situation in 1 year, 5 years, or on my deathbed? This helps distinguish between urgent but unimportant tasks and important but not urgent priorities. Spatial distancing imagines viewing your life from increasing heights, your building, your city, your country, your planet. This reduces ego-driven emotional reactions and increases objective analysis. Social perspective-taking imagines how respected figures would view your situation. Marcus Aurelius would ask himself, what would a wise philosopher advise? Modern practitioners might ask, what would my best mentor suggest? Or, how would someone I deeply respect handle this challenge? This technique accesses accumulated wisdom from multiple sources rather than relying solely on your current emotional state. Dr. Hal Hirschfield's research on temporal perspective shows that people who regularly practice future self-visualization make better long-term decisions about health, finances, and relationships because they can emotionally connect with their future consequences. The technique literally changes how your brain processes current choices by making long-term outcomes feel more immediate and real. Advanced practitioners use perspective-taking as a creative problem-solving tool. When stuck on challenges, they systematically shift viewpoints. How would my customer see this problem? What would this look like from my competitor's perspective? How will historians evaluate this decision? Each perspective shift reveals different aspects of complex situations. The key is making perspective-taking systematic rather than occasional. Weekly, spend 5 minutes imagining how today's biggest concern will seem in 10 years. This simple practice prevents minor setbacks from derailing major progress while ensuring you maintain appropriate focus on genuinely important priorities. Your problems become right-sized instead of overwhelming when you master this essential cognitive skill. If these principles are already shifting how you think about intelligence, make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to explore the 7 advanced techniques that separate good thinkers from exceptional ones, including the intelligence multiplier that cognitive scientists are just beginning to understand. Lesson 9. Memento Mori. Priority clarification. Remember you will die sounds morbid to modern ears, but Stoics use death awareness to clarify priorities with laser precision and eliminate the mental fog that clouds most decision-making. When you truly internalize life's finite nature, trivial concerns fade and essential activities become obvious. This isn't morbid obsession, but clarity enhancement. Death awareness cuts through the noise of modern life to reveal what actually deserves your intellectual energy and attention. The psychological mechanism behind Memento Mori involves what researchers call mortality salience. Conscious awareness of death's inevitability. Dr. Sheldon Solomon's terror management theory research shows that when people contemplate mortality in structured ways, rather than anxiously avoiding the topic, they experience profound shifts in values and priorities. Superficial concerns lose their emotional grip, while meaningful activities gain motivational power. Studies of people who've had near-death experiences reveal the practical benefits of mortality awareness. Dr. Kenneth Ring's research shows that NDE survivors report 67% improvement in decision-making clarity because proximity to mortality eliminates non-essential concerns. They stop worrying about social status and start focusing on relationships. They reduce time spent on entertainment and increase time spent on personal growth. They make career decisions based on meaning rather than prestige. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this practice, regularly reflecting on death's inevitability not to become morbid, but to maintain perspective on what truly matters. In his Meditations, he wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." This wasn't philosophical poetry, but practical guidance. When you remember that your time is limited, you stop wasting it on activities that don't align with your deepest values. The modern world systematically encourages mortality denial through youth-obsessed media, anti-aging marketing, and cultural taboos around death discussion. This denial creates what psychologists call temporal myopia, inability to see beyond immediate concerns to long-term significance. Memento Mori corrects this myopia by providing ultimate perspective on current challenges and opportunities. The practice involves regular, structured contemplation of mortality's implications for current priorities. This isn't depressing rumination, but strategic life planning. When you ask, "How would I spend my time if I had 1 year to live?" Or, "What would I regret not doing if I died tomorrow?" you access wisdom that's normally obscured by daily urgencies and social pressures. Advanced practitioners use Memento Mori as a decision-making filter for all major choices. Career opportunities, relationship decisions, and time allocation all become clearer when viewed through mortality's lens. The question, "Will this matter when I'm dying?" eliminates many options immediately, while highlighting others that might seem less attractive in the short term, but provide deep satisfaction over decades. Dr. Laura Carstenson's research on socio-emotional selectivity theory shows that people who maintain awareness of limited time make better social and professional choices because they prioritize emotionally meaningful activities over superficial achievements. The result is what she calls optimal aging, increasing life satisfaction despite declining physical capabilities. The technique requires balancing mortality awareness with life engagement. The goal isn't to become obsessed with death, but to use death awareness as a lens for living more intentionally. Steve Jobs captured this balance in his Stanford commencement speech. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. Monthly, ask yourself, if I had 1 year to live, what would I focus on? Your priorities become crystal clear instead of scattered across competing demands. Lesson 10. The obstacle as path. Problem solving. Reframe. The Stoic principle. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Fundamentally transforms how you approach problems and setbacks. Instead of seeing obstacles as barriers to overcome or avoid, you reframe them as information sources, skill-building opportunities, or necessary challenges that develop capabilities you wouldn't otherwise acquire. This cognitive reframe activates entirely different neural networks, moving from threat detection to opportunity recognition. Marcus Aurelius developed this principle while managing the Roman Empire during plague, war, and political upheaval. Rather than viewing these crises as unfortunate interruptions to effective leadership, he saw them as the exact circumstances that would develop his leadership capabilities. The plague taught him about uncertainty management, wars developed his strategic thinking, and political challenges enhanced his diplomatic skills. The obstacles became his curriculum for becoming a better emperor. The neuroscience behind this reframe reveals why it enhances problem-solving ability. When you perceive obstacles as threats, your brain activates the sympathetic nervous system, narrowing attention and reducing creative thinking. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson's research on positive emotions shows that when you reframe challenges as opportunities, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which broadens attention and enhances creative problem-solving by 31%. Entrepreneurs intuitively understand this principle. Every business problem, cash flow challenges, competitor actions, market changes, regulatory hurdles, contains information about market needs, operational improvements, or strategic opportunities. Companies that consistently apply obstacle as path thinking show 31% higher innovation rates because they mine problems for solutions instead of simply trying to avoid difficulties. The practical application involves systematic reframing of setbacks and challenges. When facing obstacles, ask 3 questions. What is this obstacle teaching me about my assumptions or approach? What capabilities will overcoming this challenge develop? How might this obstacle be redirecting me toward a better path? These questions transform problems from external enemies into internal development opportunities. Advanced practitioners extend this principle to anticipate obstacles as beneficial constraints. Creative professionals often impose artificial limitations on their work because constraints force innovative solutions. The sonnet's 14-line structure doesn't limit poets. It challenges them to create beauty within boundaries. Similarly, business constraints like limited budgets or tight deadlines often produce more creative solutions than unlimited resources. The technique becomes particularly powerful when applied to personal setbacks. Career disappointments often reveal misaligned values or underdeveloped skills. Relationship challenges frequently highlight communication patterns or emotional intelligence gaps. Health problems sometimes force lifestyle changes that improve long-term well-being. The obstacle contains the solution when you look deeply enough. Ryan Holiday's research on this principle shows that successful people consistently apply obstacle as path thinking across domains. They don't just overcome obstacles, they use obstacles to become more capable. The resistance becomes the development program. The problem becomes the teacher. The setback becomes the setup for a comeback. The key is maintaining this perspective during actual difficulties, not just in abstract discussions. When facing real challenges, your brain naturally defaults to threat detection and obstacle avoidance. The practice requires conscious reframing in the moment. How is this obstacle showing me exactly what I need to develop? This question shifts you from victim mentality to growth mentality. When facing challenges, ask, how is this obstacle showing me exactly what I need to develop? Your obstacles become assets instead of enemies, transforming every setback into a setup for greater capability. Lesson 11. Intellectual humility, learning acceleration. Epictetus taught that ego is the enemy of learning. When you think you already know, you stop gathering new information and updating your understanding based on evidence. Intellectual humility accelerates intelligence by maintaining curiosity, openness to correction, and recognition that knowledge is provisional rather than absolute. This isn't self-deprecation or false modesty, but learning optimization that keeps you adaptive in rapidly changing environments. The psychological mechanism involves what researchers call cognitive flexibility, the ability to update beliefs when presented with contradictory evidence. Dr. Mark Leary's research on intellectual humility shows that people who score high on humility measures learn 52% faster in complex domains because they actively seek disconfirming evidence and alternative perspectives rather than defending existing positions. Most people suffer from what psychologists call confirmation bias, the tendency to search for, interpret, and recall information that confirms pre-existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. Intellectual humility directly counters this bias by making belief updating a virtue rather than a sign of weakness. You become curious about being wrong because being wrong provides opportunities to become more accurate. The ancient Stoics understood that intellectual arrogance creates blind spots that lead to poor decisions. Socrates famously claimed that his wisdom consisted in knowing that he didn't know, and this humble stance enabled him to keep learning throughout his life while his contemporaries stopped growing intellectually once they achieved social recognition for their expertise. Modern research on expertise reveals that true experts maintain intellectual humility even in their domains of specialization. Dr. Philip Tetlock's study of forecasting accuracy shows that experts who remain humble about their predictions significantly outperform those who express high confidence. The humble experts actively seek information that could prove them wrong, while overconfident experts ignore disconfirming evidence. The practice involves systematically cultivating uncertainty about your current beliefs and remaining open to evidence that challenges your positions. This doesn't mean being wishy-washy or failing to take positions. It means holding positions while remaining open to updating them based on new information. The difference is crucial. Intellectual humility is compatible with decisive action, but incompatible with dogmatic thinking. Advanced practitioners develop what researchers call confident humility, strong confidence in their learning ability combined with appropriate uncertainty about specific beliefs. They can act decisively based on current best evidence while maintaining openness to course corrections when new evidence emerges. This combination produces superior long-term outcomes because it enables both commitment and adaptability. The technique becomes particularly valuable in professional contexts where rapid learning is essential. Technology workers, medical professionals, and business leaders who maintain intellectual humility adapt more quickly to changing conditions because they don't waste energy defending outdated approaches. They treat their knowledge as software that requires regular updates rather than hardware that's fixed permanently. Dr. Krumrai Mancuso's research shows that intellectually humble people are rated as more trustworthy and influential by colleagues because others recognize their genuine commitment to accuracy over ego protection. This creates a positive feedback loop. Others share more honest information with humble people, which accelerates their learning even further. In conversations, practice saying, "I might be wrong about this," or "What am I missing?" These phrases signal intellectual humility while inviting others to share information they might otherwise withhold. Your ignorance becomes your advantage instead of your weakness, creating continuous learning opportunities that compound over time. Lesson 12. Delayed gratification, executive function. Stoics practiced delayed gratification not for moral reasons but for mental strength. The ability to override immediate impulses in service of long-term goals directly correlates with executive function capacity, which includes working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control. When you strengthen your ability to delay gratification, you enhance all three components of executive function, creating what neuroscientists call cognitive reserve, that improves performance across all intellectual domains. The famous Stanford marshmallow experiments demonstrated that children who could delay gratification, waiting for a second marshmallow instead of eating the first one immediately, scored an average of 210 points higher on SATs years later and showed better academic performance, social competence, and emotional regulation throughout adolescence. The ability to delay gratification predicted life outcomes better than IQ tests, revealing its fundamental importance for success. The neuroscience reveals why delayed gratification enhances intelligence. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive center, must actively suppress the limbic system's immediate reward impulses. Dr. Walter Mischel's research shows that this suppression process strengthens neural pathways involved in attention control, planning, and abstract reasoning. It's like strength training for your brain's CEO functions. Stoics understood that every moment presents opportunities to practice delayed gratification, from avoiding checking your phone immediately when it buzzes to choosing the harder workout over the easier one. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced small acts of self-discipline, taking cold baths, eating simple foods, waking early, not because these activities were inherently virtuous, but because they strengthened his capacity for self-control in more important domains. Modern research confirms this ancient wisdom. Dr. Roy Baumeister's studies on willpower show that self-control operates like a muscle. It can be depleted by overuse, but strengthened through consistent practice. People who practice small acts of delayed gratification in one area show improved self-control across all areas of life. The businessman who delays checking email for the first hour of his workday develops the same mental muscles needed to resist impulsive investment decisions. The practical application involves systematically introducing micro-delays into daily routines. Instead of immediately responding to impulses, you create brief pauses that activate the prefrontal cortex and strengthen executive control. These pauses don't need to be long. Even 10-second delays can strengthen the neural pathways involved in impulse control. Advanced practitioners use delayed gratification strategically to enhance specific cognitive functions. To improve working memory, they practice holding multiple pieces of information in mind before acting. To enhance cognitive flexibility, they delay initial responses to problems and generate multiple solution approaches. To strengthen inhibitory control, they practice stopping automatic behaviors and choosing alternative responses. The technique becomes particularly powerful when applied to information consumption. In our age of instant access to unlimited information, the ability to delay information gratification, reading entire articles before forming opinions, researching topics thoroughly before making decisions, sitting with uncertainty before seeking answers, creates significant cognitive advantages. Dr. Lawrence Steinberg's research on adolescent brain development shows that delayed gratification capacity continues developing into the mid-20s, suggesting that this skill can be enhanced throughout early adulthood. The key is consistent practice with gradually increasing challenges, like a progressive workout program for your self-control muscles. Practice micro-delays. Wait 10 seconds before checking your phone, choosing the harder workout, or responding to emails. Your self-control becomes your cognitive multiplier, enhancing performance across all mental domains through strengthened executive function. Lesson 13. Social wisdom. Interpersonal intelligence. Stoics understood that much of life's complexity comes through other people, so they developed sophisticated frameworks for social interaction based on understanding human nature rather than trying to change or control others. They studied psychological patterns, motivational systems, and behavioral tendencies not to manipulate, but to predict, understand, and respond wisely to social situations. This social intelligence directly impacts your ability to gather information, test ideas, and implement solutions through collaborative relationships. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about understanding human behavior, how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. This was antisocial withdrawal, but strategic attention management, focusing on understanding others' perspectives and motivations rather than judging their actions. This understanding enables more effective communication and collaboration because you can frame ideas in ways that resonate with others' values and concerns. The neuroscience of social intelligence reveals why this skill enhances overall cognitive performance. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research at UCLA shows that people with higher social intelligence demonstrate superior performance on complex reasoning tasks because social skills and analytical skills use overlapping neural networks. The ability to understand others' mental states enhances your ability to understand complex systems generally. Research by Dr. Daniel Goleman shows that people with higher social intelligence earn 25% more over their careers because they can navigate complex human systems more effectively. They gather better information through relationships, receive more accurate feedback about their ideas, and implement solutions more successfully because they understand how to motivate and coordinate with others. Social intelligence becomes a force multiplier for individual intelligence. The practical application involves developing what psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to accurately model others' beliefs, desires, intentions, and emotional states. This skill enables you to predict how others will respond to different approaches, choose communication strategies that will be well received, and identify potential sources of resistance or support for your ideas. Advanced practitioners develop domain-specific social intelligence for their professional contexts. Entrepreneurs learn to read customer psychology, market dynamics, and investor motivations. Leaders develop understanding of team dynamics, organizational culture, and stakeholder interests. Sales professionals master persuasion psychology and decision-making processes. The key is studying human behavior systematically rather than relying on intuition alone. The Stoic approach emphasizes understanding others without trying to change them. This reduces frustration and conflict while increasing effectiveness. When you accept that others will act according to their own values and interests, you can design approaches that align with their motivations rather than opposing them. This creates what negotiation experts call win-win solutions, where everyone's interests are served, Modern research on emotional intelligence shows that socially skilled people are more effective at collaborative problem solving because they can manage group dynamics, resolve conflicts, and maintain productive relationships even during disagreements. They create psychological safety that enables others to share honest feedback and creative ideas. The technique involves daily practice observing and understanding others' perspectives without judgment. During conversations, focus on understanding the other person's viewpoint rather than preparing your response. Ask yourself, what does this person really want? What are they afraid of? How do they see this situation differently than I do? Practice reading one person's emotional state accurately each day without asking them directly. Your relationships become intelligence amplifiers instead of energy drains, creating collaborative advantages that compound over time through improved communication and cooperation. Lesson 14, Evening Reflection, Metacognitive Development. Each evening, Stoics reviewed their day's thoughts, decisions, and actions, not for self-criticism or guilt, but for pattern recognition and systematic improvement. This metacognitive practice enhances your ability to think about thinking, identifying mental habits that help or hinder clear reasoning. Seneca wrote, "When the lamp is taken away and my wife has fallen silent, I examine the whole day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This daily practice transforms experience into wisdom through systematic analysis. The psychological mechanism involves what researchers call metacognition, awareness and understanding of your own thought processes. Dr. John Flavel's foundational research shows that people with stronger metacognitive skills demonstrate superior performance across all learning domains because they can identify when they're confused, recognize gaps in their understanding, and adjust their strategies accordingly. Evening reflection systematically develops these metacognitive abilities. Modern research on expertise reveals that deliberate reflection accelerates skill development across all domains by 34% because it converts raw experience into structured insights. Dr. Anders Ericsson's studies of expert performance show that masters in every field, from chess to medicine to music, engage in systematic reflection about their practice sessions, identifying patterns in their mistakes and successes that guide future improvement. The Stoic approach to evening reflection involves structured analysis rather than random rumination. Marcus Aurelius used specific questions to guide his review. What did I learn today? Where did my reasoning fail? How did I respond to challenges? What would I do differently? These questions transform daily experiences into data points for continuous improvement rather than sources of regret or self-judgment. The practice develops what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to switch between different mental frameworks and adapt thinking strategies based on situational demands. When you regularly examine your thought processes, you become aware of when you're using ineffective mental models and can consciously switch to more appropriate approaches. This flexibility becomes crucial for complex problem-solving and creative thinking. Advanced practitioners extend evening reflection beyond individual performance to include analysis of their mental models, assumptions, and decision-making frameworks. They ask questions like, what assumptions proved incorrect today? Which mental model served me well and which didn't? How did my emotional state influence my judgment? This deeper analysis improves the quality of future thinking by identifying systematic biases and blind spots. The technique also enhances emotional regulation by creating psychological distance from daily experiences. Dr. Ethan Cross's research shows that people who reflect on emotional experiences using structured analysis rather than immersive reliving show better emotional recovery and learning from difficult situations. The evening reflection creates this beneficial distance while maintaining the learning value of experience. Research by Dr. Giada Di Stefano at Harvard Business School shows that workers who spend 15 minutes daily reflecting on lessons learned perform 23% better on subsequent tasks compared to those who spend the same time gaining additional experience. The reflection time proves more valuable than additional practice time because it optimizes learning from existing experience. The key is maintaining consistency and structure in the reflection process. Random thinking about the day provides little benefit, but systematic analysis using consistent questions creates compound learning effects over time. The daily practice builds what researchers call reflective capacity, the ability to extract maximum learning from any experience. Each evening, spend 5 minutes asking, "What did I think clearly about today? Where was my reasoning unclear? What will I do differently tomorrow?" Your experiences become data instead of just memories, creating systematic improvement in judgment and decision-making that compounds over years of consistent practice. Lesson 15. Mental Models Integration, Systems Thinking. The ultimate Stoic intelligence technique involves integrating all these practices into a coherent system rather than applying them piecemeal as isolated life hacks. Stoicism isn't a collection of random techniques, but a comprehensive framework for navigating complexity with wisdom, where each principle reinforces and amplifies the others. When you integrate these practices systematically, they create compound effects that produce results far greater than the sum of their individual parts. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this integration, seamlessly combining dichotomy of control with negative visualization, perspective-taking with virtue-based decision-making, and present-moment awareness with systematic reflection. His meditations reveal not separate techniques, but an integrated approach to living and thinking that addresses all aspects of human experience simultaneously. This integration creates what systems theorists call emergent properties, capabilities that emerge from the interaction between components rather than existing in any single component. The neuroscience of skill integration shows why systematic combination produces superior results. Dr. Arne Dietrich's research on expertise development reveals that masters think in integrated systems rather than isolated techniques, achieving performance that seems impossible to novices. When individual skills become integrated into coherent systems, they create what researchers call expert intuition, the ability to make superior decisions rapidly because underlying principles have become second nature. Research on expert performance across domains, from chess masters to medical diagnosticians to business strategists, shows that expertise involves pattern recognition at increasingly higher levels of abstraction. Novices focus on individual moves or symptoms, while experts recognize complex patterns that integrate multiple variables simultaneously. Stoic mental models integration develops this same systemic thinking capability. The practical application involves creating personal algorithms based on Stoic principles that guide thinking and decision-making across all life domains. Instead of remembering 15 separate techniques, you develop integrated frameworks that automatically apply multiple principles simultaneously. For example, when facing major decisions, you might automatically engage dichotomy of control, focusing on controllable elements, negative visualization, considering potential obstacles, virtue-based analysis, ensuring ethical alignment, and perspective-taking, viewing from multiple timeframes and viewpoints. Advanced practitioners develop domain-specific integrations tailored to their particular roles and challenges. An entrepreneur might integrate Stoic principles into comprehensive business decision-making frameworks. A parent might integrate them into child-rearing philosophies. A healthcare worker might integrate them into patient care approaches. The key is systematic application rather than random experimentation. The integration process involves recognizing connections between different Stoic practices and consciously linking them into coherent systems. Emotional objectivity enhances systematic self-questioning, which improves delayed gratification, which strengthens present-moment awareness, which deepens evening reflection. Each practice reinforces the others when applied systematically rather than randomly. Modern research on systems thinking shows that people who think in integrated systems rather than isolated components demonstrate superior performance on complex problems because they can see relationships and feedback loops that others miss. They understand that changing one element affects the entire system, enabling more effective interventions and strategies. The technique becomes particularly powerful when facing complex, ambiguous situations where multiple variables interact in unpredictable ways. Instead of applying single solutions to multifaceted problems, you engage integrated frameworks that address multiple dimensions simultaneously. This systems approach often reveals creative solutions that wouldn't be apparent when using isolated techniques. Your entire approach becomes greater than the sum of its parts when you master this integration, creating what ancient Stoics called wisdom, the ability to navigate life's complexity with consistent excellence across all domains of human experience. The neuroscience behind Stoic practices. Recent neuroscience research reveals why ancient Stoic practices enhance intelligence. They systematically strengthen the prefrontal cortex while reducing amygdala reactivity. Dr. Judson Brewer's studies at Brown University show that mindfulness practices similar to Stoic exercises increase gray matter density in areas associated with attention and emotional regulation. When Marcus Aurelius wrote about controlling his mind, he was unknowingly describing neuroplasticity principles that scientists confirmed 2,000 years later. Your brain literally rewires itself through consistent Stoic practice. Common misapplications that backfire. Many people misapply Stoicism as emotional suppression or passive acceptance, which actually reduces intelligence by creating internal conflict and learned helplessness. True Stoicism involves emotional awareness and active engagement with what you can control. The difference is crucial. Suppression creates psychological tension that impairs cognitive function, while Stoic emotional objectivity creates clarity that enhances it. Research shows that people who suppress emotions show 23% worse performance on complex reasoning tasks compared to those who observe emotions without being controlled by them. Advanced integration techniques. Expert Stoic practitioners develop meta-habits, automatic systems that apply multiple principles simultaneously. For example, they might combine morning negative visualization with evening reflection, or integrate virtue-based decision-making with the view from above. This systematic integration creates what cognitive scientists call expert intuition, the ability to make superior decisions rapidly because underlying principles have become second nature. The most sophisticated approach involves creating personal algorithms based on Stoic principles that guide thinking and decision-making across all life domains. These 15 Stoic principles offer a complete system for maximizing intelligence, from reducing cognitive load through the dichotomy of control to developing expert-level metacognition through evening reflection. The key is systematic application rather than random experimentation. Start with the principle that addresses your biggest mental challenge, then gradually integrate others as they become natural. In our next exploration, we'll dive into advanced Stoic practices that master-level practitioners use to achieve seemingly impossible levels of mental clarity and decision-making precision.